Baladi, the word in Arabic, directly translates to my country, but this word in Egyptian Arabic, we use it to describe a lot of different things. We use it to describe people, food, clothing style, music style. You can even use it to describe somebody's attitude. They have a very Baladi attitude. Within the music, this is actually a pretty big category of music, and it has evolved over the years into shabi and all of these things. But generally, when we're talking about Baladi, in the context of belly dance, we're usually talking about the Baladi progression, which is a kind of song where first we have accordion and then it progresses slowly into rhythm section with the tabla. This is generally what we're using for Baladi in the belly dance world. But it's important to understand that Baladi, it's a much larger category of music. There are Baladi songs with singing, and it goes back a pretty long time. Even within the Baladi progression, there is actually a lot of variation, and there are different styles of Baladi progression. There is even a style that has a melody inside. Other than that, most of the Baladi progressions are pretty improvisational. We start with the solo accordion playing a taksim. Then we have the tabla slowly coming in, playing accents and playing slow Baladi rhythm. There are certain sections of Baladi that are always there. One of the most important sections is the call and response, which is usually happening in this part of the song, the slow Baladi rhythm section. We have the tabla playing accents and the accordion responding, or vice versa. The accordion plays and the tabla responds. This is starting off the slow Baladi section, and then maybe again in the song we have this part again. And Baladi progressions always end in a maksum rhythm. There's always some part where we change. We speed the music up into maksum, and sometimes we even continue into a tabla solo from here. One thing that's important to remember about Baladi is that it's not really folklore style. Even though this is a very, very traditional style of dance within Egypt, it does have Western influences. As far as the music goes, you can see this in the main instruments that we have. So when we're talking about Baladi progression, we have our tabla, we have our drums, but also the two main instruments we hear on top of this are the accordion and the saxophone, which are, of course, Western instruments, Western influence. But the way that we dance to this music traditionally is not so much influenced by Western movement. The main movements and feeling of this dance is really based in social dance. We have most of the main base movements of belly dance. We have the circles and the hip drops and the shimmies and the chest and shoulders, all of these things. And even at some points, there is a stick added to Baladi, specifically in one style from Alexandria for weddings. When we're executing the movements of this style, remember that this is not coming from trained dancers, specifically Western trained dancers. So the traditional movements we want are, as I said, the hip movements, whereas things like turns and back bends and arabesque and all of the focus of this dance. Another element you want to think about when you dance to Baladi music is the feeling in your body, not just the feeling that you get connecting with the music, the taksim and the rhythms, but also the physical feeling in your body. If we've had a lot of Western dance training, we tend to stand very straight with our center of gravity high in the chest, and we're very poised with the arms in the upper body. But with this kind of dance, where it's coming from the social and traditional dances, we don't have this posture. We have a connection with the earth. We have flat feet. We have very heavy hips, and the center of gravity is down in the hips. So when we move, we relax and move from here first, as opposed to keeping the separation between the chest and the hips to keep a poised upper body. For me personally, when I dance to Baladi, I absolutely love to improvise. But when you're making choreography as well, remember to pace yourself during the song. The way that I look at Baladi is a progression. It's a slow progression from the slow taksim happening with the accordion, where we have to listen closely to not just the notes that the accordion is playing, but the speed and the volume, so that we can properly match our movements with what's going on, making sure that we're following the softness of the accordion as well as the hardness later of the tabla. So it starts in this very soft and slow place, and then we have our call and response between the two instruments. Usually at the beginning, it's not very energetic. Usually this starts a little bit softly. And I look at it as we start with the accordion and the softness in the beginning. The middle part, especially after we have the call and response and we start with the slow Baladi, we have the rhythm and the tabla coming in, but it's still not the overpowering part in the music. We still have a balance between the accordion and the tabla. So after we have our first call and response, I like to mix my movements, still keep my softness following the accordion or the saxophone, but also starting to do movements with the rhythm softly. Because the last part of the music, the tabla, is going to take over, and it's going to be very loud and very energetic. Save this for all of our very energetic hip movement and shimmies, because then it's more interesting for the audience as well. We have this progression from slow movements with slow music. We start to mix the hips and the actness, and then in the end, we end with this big finale of super energetic hips and so at this point, we can save this for all of our very energetic hip movement and shimmies, because then it's more interesting for the audience as well. We have this progression from slow movements with slow music. We start to mix the hips and the accents with the softness, and then in the end, we end with this big finale of super hip drops and shimmies and all of this stuff. This is the way I like to think about the Baladi when I improvise, but also when I choreograph. So since Baladi is coming from social dance and traditional dances of the common people in Egypt, the traditional, not costumes, but their traditional clothing is going to be the galabeyas that you see both men and women wearing. For belly dance, we have come up with almost a stylized version of this costume, having the same silhouette and the same shape of the galabeya dress, but adding strass, adding maybe open with bra underneath and hip scarf, just to make it fit more in the context of a belly dance show. I think it's important to wear galabeya for Baladi, especially if you're doing something like competition or there's only this one show that you're doing, one song, Baladi, because it echoes the style. If I'm looking at Baladi as a category, I want to see the galabeya, and I want to see the attitude of the Baladi girl, not a very poised oriental dancer. I want to see the style, not just through the dance, but also through the costuming and through the attitude of the dancer. But one thing I will mention about the costumes is, of course, not always we're going to do in a galabeya. For example, if I have a full show and I don't have time to change my costume during my show, of course, maybe at the end of my show, I'll do a Baladi with the tabla. But I do think if you're only dancing Baladi, that you should consider the costume